Hello and welcome back to the Elephant Lounge. I'm your host Tuesday. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Before we get into Michael Jackson, because you know that's where I'm going, let's face it. Before we get into that though, I do want to talk just a little bit, just a couple minutes about Jaclyn Hill. Because after the last podcast I recorded, I started seeing more and more, and a lot more information became available. In fact, one girl, I watched a video of hers, and if I find it, I will link it below because it is incredible. She ordered the entire collection of the nude lipsticks and she went through each of the tubes, and for one of the tubes that she had, she found 3 metal pieces inside the lipstick. Not only that, but she was pulling out little bits of plastic in addition to the white fibers or hairs that people were finding. She also found black hairs or fibers that were in her lipstick. Another girl found what appeared to be a dog hair, I'm not kidding, in her lipstick. And the list goes on, and it just became very obvious to me at this point. Okay, I got it. No, this is definitely much bigger than even I myself perceived. I am generally just somebody who likes to be a little bit more prudent, and I do believe that in general social media can make things a lot bigger than what they are. But no, it's definitely a huge issue, and we did hear from Jaclyn Hill, last night, she did say everyone was going to get their lipsticks. But the problem that I still am having with Miss Hill is, why did you give this message on Instagram and not YouTube? You're a YouTuber. You need to go on YouTube, do a live stream. How easy would that be? I mean, hell, people would probably super chat her. She could go over to YouTube and tell her audience, hey, we're giving everyone a refund. I'm assuming that the reason this occurred is because she needed a week or so to negotiate with her insurance company, because I doubt any of this is directly coming out of her pocket. In fact, a lot of people are speculating that old Morphe's behind this. I don't put anything past Jaclyn at this point, especially after watching the video with metal pieces inside the lipstick. My God, how horrifying. It's over. Okay, it's over. Everyone gets their money back. Will Jaclyn Hill Cosmetics or Jaclyn Cosmetics, will this be able to go on? Will she be able to sell more products? I don't know. I sure as hell won't be buying any. I don't know how many people will be willing to do that, but if there are some satisfied customers out there, they probably will. But unfortunately for Jaclyn, it's not going to be the huge success she wanted it to be. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, we can get into what everyone is really here for, and that is Michael Jackson. So last week I finally finished. I say finally because this is a heavy read. It is called Michael Jackson Unauthorized by Christopher Anders. This book is complete. It's heavy. It's hard to get through because there's a lot of information. It is packed with details. This book takes us from sort of the beginning of Michael's career in Gary, Indiana, and the family and everything that they went through, all the way to just after the settlement was paid to Jordan's family. It's pretty cutthroat. It's pretty dry. It's not salacious by any means. It's very much, here's what happened, here's what people said, and this is what the outcome was. It goes on to the next thing. My only complaint, I guess you could say, would be that it's kind of hard to follow along with the timeline because it sort of hops around. As much as I want to criticize that, do I honestly have a better way? Or can I provide a criticism with a solution? And the answer is no. I don't know how else you would tell the story, because the truth is, in some of these stories, you have to sort of establish some of the basic facts, and then you kind of have to go back and start telling more of the story. So it's very difficult. Michael Jackson's life it's flavorful. We'll put it that way. There's a lot of stuff going on. We find out a lot about his past and how he was sheltered from socializing with other children, other people. He only could be with his own family. He was forced to rehearse, and everything was very focused on the music. Him and his brothers were forced to perform in strip clubs, so he was exposed to seedy lifestyles well before a child should ever be exposed. Well, they should never be exposed to a strip club, let's face it. Michael Jackson's brothers went so far as to purchase, that's not the word I want to use, they solicited a prostitute for Michael Jackson and locked her up in a room with him. You get the feeling that Michael Jackson initially had very good intentions in this world and wanted to be a good person. He was following the religion of his mother, who was a devout Jehovah's Witness. Even after he became very famous and well known, whether it be through Jackson 5 or even after he released Off the Wall, he was going around in neighborhoods and knocking on people's doors. Of course, often he would do so in a disguise. Talks a lot about Michael Jackson being in disguises. Michael Jackson had this desire to sort of go out into the world and mix with the plebeians, I suppose, and do so in these costumes. However, oddly enough, these costumes seem to draw more attention to him than, what they should. I mean, if you're going to wear something to mix in with people, you would think that you would wear something a little bit more general or anonymous. Instead, he would wear women's dresses, or, he'd wear this obvious fake beard or fake mustache, something that would draw even more attention to him. Which, was that on purpose? I don't know. Even when he was himself, he would wear surgical masks, or he would wear these military uniforms with armbands. He was always drawing attention to himself, yet at the same time he was always trying to tell everyone how he wanted privacy, or he wanted to be like everyone else, or he wanted to experience real life, but somehow he just couldn't be bothered to learn just basic things about blending in. He was a very strange character. We also get to learn a lot about business deals that were made behind the scenes. And I think it's safe to say that Michael Jackson did not care about anybody but himself, and everything with him or his family was all about the bottom line. It's not surprising to me. It does talk about the recording rights. It does talk about how he purchased various rights to songs, and this idea was something that Paul McCartney had discussed with him about how he's getting money by owning rights to various songs, etc., etc. And then soon enough, right after that, Michael Jackson purchases the Beatles catalog, which kind of just goes to show that there's such a coldness, right? There's just a coldness about him. I mean, imagine being friends with someone, at least friends enough that you're recording a song with them, you're bonding with them, and they did so at Neverland, because I believe it was Paul McCartney that had rented the property that was on what would become Neverland, and that's where they recorded and got together. So they're spending all this quality time together, doing their thing, being friends. I mean, they're both famous, obviously if you're famous, you want to be friends with people who are also famous, and you're doing your thing, and they're kind of telling you some things, and a month later or whatever, you just take your friend's idea, and I don't understand how that's okay. It's funny how the fans of Michael Jackson want to talk about how dare Wade and James go after Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson did so many wonderful things for them. But this is the same guy who treated people like Paul McCartney like crap. He treated a lot of people like crap. And I'm not going to get into all the details because there's just too many. If you want to know more, definitely I suggest read the book. But the bottom line is, it's one person after the next. As far as these, it also gets into details with the stealing of songs. I absolutely believe Michael Jackson stole those songs, and he got away with it with his charm. He got on the stand in many of these cases, which is weird. He had no problem boldly testifying in court when it came, or giving depositions or doing whatever he needed to do to defend himself for copyright infringement. However, when it came to Jordan's case, he wanted nothing to do with giving any type of testimony. Absolutely nothing. He wanted that settled right away. And of course, we all know why. We've gone through this before. But it is interesting to note that he went ahead and he testified. And he got on the stand and he started singing and doing his little performance and dancing. And I know that at least one of those depositions is available on YouTube, and you can watch it. One of them is very long, and I believe it was done in Mexico City, if I remember correctly. Okay, so one of the cases had to do with this Crystal Cartier, so I'll just read this little part here for you. Denver songwriter Crystal Cartier added her name to the list of composers and lyricists who strongly disagreed. This is in regards to him stealing music. Cartier wrote a song entitled Dangerous in 1985 and had performed it for hundreds of people around Denver for years. In October 1990, she recorded it, registered the copyright, and published it with BMI. She released her song Dangerous as part of an album entitled Love Story. In July 1991, it was played repeatedly on the radio in Denver. When she first heard Michael's song Dangerous played over the radio station KS 104 in late November 1991, she immediately called the disc jockey. "Damn," the DJ said, "it's the same song. His is just slower." The songs not only possessed the same title, but according to Cartier, they sounded virtually identical. In June of 1992, Cartier filed a $40 million suit against Michael, claiming he had stolen her song. Ultimately, I can't remember, I think he basically got away with it, essentially. Even though she was able to prove all of this, they get into court, and if he does his performance, it was the same thing with the other copyright infringement cases. It's awful. It's absolutely awful how he stomped on people and got away with it. And he did it knowing that he could get away with it. All sorts of examples of him screwing people over and knowing he can get away with it because of who he was. He was a bully is what he was. And in the meantime, he was trying to have this image of, oh, I'm Mr. Nice Guy. I'm so wonderful. I care about all these children. There's a story from his assistant, his secretary. Her name is Charlie Michaels, and she worked for Michael, and she would arrange to have those parties with children. So some of these children that were coming to Neverland Ranch, this was their last big hoorah before the big shutdown, right? Okay, these are children who are dying. This was their last day. They were invited to these parties at Neverland, and she said that they weren't these full day affairs. They maybe lasted half of the day, and so the children would come, and the entire time they would be asking, "Where's Michael? Where's Michael? Where's Michael?" She said Michael would come out for maybe 5 to 6 minutes, say hi, sneak around back, and go wait for Macaulay Culkin or whoever his little boyfriend was at the time. And she said it was just heartbreaking because that's all they got to see him. And that was the image that was given to everybody else, was that he spent all this time with these children, and he did all this stuff, and he helped them, and the reality is he just did it for show. He wasn't interested in really helping anybody. He did this stuff for show. There was no real, genuine caring. I mean, like I said, this book just goes into one thing after the next. Okay, and then before we go any further, I just want to let y'all know that this show is sponsored today. Yes, I do have a sponsor. It is by American Pedo Insurance, and you can call today for rates and plans that cover for accidental child molestation. That number is 1-800-PEDO-1, 1-800-733-6663. That number again is 1-800-PEDO-1 or 1-800-733-6663. Call today for plans and rates for your accidental pedo insurance. You never know when you might accidentally molest a child, just like Michael Jackson. Okay, so now getting back with everything, we have other interesting stories that come from various people. One of these people is James DeBarge. Now, you might remember him as Janet Jackson's first husband. I don't really remember this guy at all, but apparently what he has said is that he married Janet. He stayed at Havenhurst. Their room was down the hall from Michael's, okay? And he would see Michael come in constantly with these young boys. And one of these boys was identified as Sean Lennon. Sean Lennon comes up again because there was a bodyguard that talks about how Sean Lennon was left at the gatehouse. This is all confirmed by Yoko Ono, by the way, because she got on some interview and said that she left her son with Michael all the time for a week or more at a time. And of course, this is confirmed by the staff at Havenhurst. Okay, so Leroy Thomas also stated that he was contacted by Michael. Michael was trying to get a hold of somebody else, and he ended up getting a hold of Leroy, and Leroy said that Michael wanted him to go into his bathroom that was attached to his room and destroy a picture. So he had to go get a key, come up the stairs, get into his bathroom. He looks in the bathroom on the mirror, and there's a picture, and it is a picture of a young boy naked, and he was asked to destroy the photo. Apparently he may have had some problems destroying the photo because it was a Polaroid, but he did remove it, so we know he had at least that one. Later on, we will learn that Michael Jackson did have another photo of a naked boy that would be later believed to be Jonathan Spence, but Jonathan Spence did not testify, so there's no way of confirming that. So now we have at least 2 boys with naked pictures, and I believe that it was James or Wade, or maybe both of them. I know at least one of them said that Michael did take naked pics of them as well. So that's interesting. Getting back to James DeBarge, he has several stories about Michael, aside from just the Sean Lennon thing. He basically comes out and says, look, I had a drug problem. I had problems with substance abuse, and Michael knew that nobody liked me, that Joe didn't like him. I don't think Catherine liked him. He kind of knew that no one would believe anything he said anyway, which is part of the reason why he didn't say anything. But he confirms that he saw Michael inappropriate with these boys in the sense that he saw them coming in and out of the room. He saw Michael chasing the one boy around in his underwear. He feels that it was obvious what was going on, that there's no doubt in his mind that something was going on with Michael and these boys. He also seems to believe that, well, I'm just going to come out and say it because there's no other nice way to say it, but Bubbles. Okay? Bubbles. He saw something inappropriate with Bubbles. Interestingly enough, when Bubbles got to be a certain age, Michael got rid of him as well. Just got rid of his pet. Isn't that lovely? Who does that? Who raises a pet, even a dog or a cat, and then just gets rid of it? I don't understand that at all. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read a couple interesting passages here, sort of paraphrase some of this. Transamerica, if you remember, was the insurance company Michael went through. He was trying to get his insurance company to pay the settlement with Jordan. And Transamerica officials may have admired Michael's lawyers for their audacity, but they had no intention of knuckling under. That same day, claims analyst Russ Wardrop fired off a letter to Howard Weitzman informing him that Michael's policy covered him only in the event he was injured in an accident. Acts of sexual activity, Wardrop stated, do not constitute an accident. The letter went on to point out that Transamerica declines coverage for any damages flowing from the allegations of sexual conduct in the complaint. Further, acts of sexual activity, especially those committed against a minor, are inherently intentional, wrongful, and harmful. Coverage for such acts is precluded by California Insurance Code Section 555. On that basis, as well, coverage is denied under the Transamerican policy for the allegations in the Randall lawsuit. So that's pretty clear, I would say. The Jackson's team, of course, they played legal hardball with all of this. And it does say an offer was made on behalf of Transamerica on a one-time only basis to resolve the claim. But this offer was rejected by the insured. Evidently, Michael wanted his insurance company to cover the whole cost. So they were not willing to cover the whole thing. And for whatever reason, Michael rejected any payment offer that they made. Ultimately, he ended up paying upwards of $26 million, with $1 million going to Jordan's father. And I believe it worked out to $15 million that would be put into Jordan's trust fund until he was 18. So everything that Jordan got was in a trust fund. It wasn't like they just got a whole bunch of money and were able to spend it right away. It wasn't like that. Jackson had to pay about $5 million every year for 4 years. Or I say about because it was $15 million. But if he signed, he would get a $2 million bonus. So that works out to be a little over It worked out to be, I believe, a little over $17 million in total. And then, of course, when you have that in a trust fund and it's just sitting there, it's accruing, it's, getting a lot of money. He ended up getting a lot more than just the $15 million because obviously it's being invested. He's making interest on that money. That's going to be a lot of money when he was 18. Of course, they did get $2 million. The father and the mother got $2 million because, or I think it was $1.5 million or $2 million. Somewhere around there, but they needed money for protection because in the meantime they needed to protect themselves from the public, which I don't blame them. They basically had to go underground. This was another interesting tidbit here. If people believe that Michael Jackson paid millions of dollars, Felder retorted, and he didn't get a promise that the boy wouldn't testify, then they also believe in the Tooth Fairy. Among the many lingering questions about the case was the role of the Justice Department. FBI agents had reportedly compared Jackson to their own secret profile of a career pedophile and found that he matched virtually all the profile characteristics. Exactly what I've been saying. Excessive interest in children, refers to children as pure, innocent, age and gender preference, identifies with children more than adults, limited peer relationships, etc. A particularly chilling passage in the FBI profile. The homes of some pedophiles have been described as shrines to children or miniature amusement parks. God, how creepy is that? Okay, it goes on. Why then hadn't federal authorities sought charges against him? According to Jordan, Michael had molested him in Vegas and Monaco, meaning that Michael, if the charges were true, had taken the young victim across state lines and international borders for the purpose of committing a crime. Jim Clemente, I believe, talked about this, that the FBI was interested in perhaps pursuing a case against Michael because he had taken him across state lines. So if he did so, because of the high profile nature of the case, the U.S. Attorney of Los Angeles raised the issue with Attorney General Janet Reno. Interesting. Now listen to this. After conferring with the White House, it was agreed that in the wake of the LA riots, God forbid, the matter was best left in the hands of local law enforcement. Nobody in the Clinton administration, said one official, wants to be the one to put Michael Jackson in the slammer, including Bill and Hillary. Of course, they were too busy pardoning all their criminal friends and relatives. So of course they weren't going to go after Michael Jackson. Could you imagine? Charlie Michaels, I think I mentioned her before. She's the one that talks about the parties. She helped arrange these parties where Michael spent 5 to 6 minutes with little kids who were dying and then left. She came forward to tell her eyewitness account of Michael's grabbing another special friend's crotch because, as she put it, the settlement sickened me enough. Tatiana, the dancer from Jackson's The Way You Make Me Feel video, had been carted out by the Jackson family only weeks earlier to hint at a romantic relationship on national TV. Of course, we all know that when she tried kissing Michael Jackson, he fired her. She kissed him on stage for like a second, a literal second, and he fired her. I shouldn't say he fired her, he had someone else fire her. She now admitted, this is Tatiana, she now admitted it was all a ruse. Quite frankly, she said, when I read he paid the boy millions, it turned my stomach, because she knew. She knew. 2 private investigators who had worked for Feldman were so outraged that they too went public. San Francisco-based Sandra Sutherland and Jack Palladino, who had also worked previously on the Patty Hearst and Menendez cases, encountered a significant number of credible witnesses, boys and young men, who said they had been molested by Michael. I've talked to 2 grown men crying on the phone, talking about their experiences with Michael. Sutherland said, some are in prisons and mental hospitals abroad because of what happened to them. Sutherland went on to say that while a number claimed to have been victimized several times, there were also a few who had been picked up on tour or on the LA streets for one-night stands. All were showered with money and gifts. There are still victims whose parents don't want to get involved. I was horrified by the lengths people will go to protect their interests, even when it's contrary to human decency and justice. Sutherland and Palladino stressed they believed Jordan. They believed Jordan's story largely because of the specific erotic details a child wouldn't know unless he lived in a porno store. And again, this is the same thing with Gavin, and it always struck me. Well, I mean, that was the turning point for me, right? When I'm reading these court papers and I'm reading the interviews and I'm thinking to myself, how in the hell would Gavin know the same stuff that happened with Jordan? Their stories were very similar in the language that was used, the duck butter and lights, rubba, all these nicknames and stuff. How in the world would Gavin know that? There was no case because, like I said, Jordan's case was sealed. None of that information was available to us until Gavin's case in 2005, which was much later. So it's part of the reason why he was believed, because investigators knew. Okay, let's read this as it applies to the experts. Pelicano then supposedly took the taped conversation to 4 of the country's top child sex abuse experts for analysis, confident they would be willing to offer expert testimony that the boy was lying. It was reported that all 4 experts believed Jordan's testimony, and that ultimately some within the Jackson camp decided that the only way to handle this was to try to take the 4 experts off the market. Each was allegedly put on a $5,000 retainer and guaranteed hourly fees as an expert witness, ensuring that they would not be compelled to testify on the boy's behalf. Pelicano would later deny both that he had taped a conversation with Jordan and that he had played it to therapists. I found this interesting. After Michael Jackson was accused of molestation, he went on TV and he did this whole, I'm innocent, I'm going to fight, blah, blah, blah. It was indeed an emotional performance. Anguish was in the New York Post one-word headline, but unconvincing to several leading lie detection experts who monitored Michael's statements. Charles R. McQuiston, who co-invented the psychological stress evaluator used by law enforcement agencies in 36 states, declared it one of the most damning tapes I've ever seen. The stress in Jackson's voice shows he is lying. Atlanta voice dress expert Dr. Martin Markowitz agreed. My analysis shows that in his mind and his heart, Michael knows he has abused one or more children. When he says, I don't say I'm God, but I try to be godlike in my heart, the stress nearly goes off the chart. That was too much even for Michael to stomach. And of course that tells you all you need to know about that. And let's see. I'm going kind of long, guys. I apologize, but there's a lot to cover and we might as well talk about some of it, right? There's a couple passages here that give you an idea of what I referenced earlier about Michael Jackson and contracts and things like that. He was constantly being sued, by the way, because he was constantly pissing people off. Here's some examples of that. Even after settling the Jordan lawsuit, Michael remained deep in litigation. Concert promoter Marcel Avram had filed a $20 million suit against Michael for canceling the second leg of the Dangerous World tour. Citing a clause in his contract, Michael's lawyers claimed he did not have to return $3 million in advances because illness caused him to cancel. Avram's lawyers fired back with the illness was an addiction that Jackson had concealed from the promoters. The Children's Peace Foundation, meanwhile, they filed a $150 million lawsuit. This was a class action suit claiming Michael did not deliver on his legal obligation to lend his name to the line of Children's Peace Foundation merchandise. Then there were rappers who filed a breach of contract suit claiming Michael reneged on his agreement to let them use Beatles material in their rap music. And there was another problem Paul McCartney had. After Michael had obtained the rights to the Beatles catalog, he was allowing their songs to be in commercials and stuff like that. And I think Paul just felt that sort of cheapened their material, which, I mean, obviously he can do what he wants with it because it's his catalog now, but at the same time, the whole thing was disrespectful. I don't think you should do with other people's music that you wouldn't want done with yours. It just seems sort of disturbing to me. But so hopefully that gives you a bit of flavor about some of the things that you learn in this book. I mean, there's literally so much here, but I just wanted to tell you a bunch of different little things that were in this book. And if you're interested, I say go ahead and read it. If you're interested at all in who Michael Jackson was and you want to get a deeper understanding of the many things that he did in his life, without question, he did work and he was very much obsessed with his music, or I guess other people's music, and stealing it. But this really lays it all out there for you. It's sort of raw, and it really does go into detail about the young boys that he hung out with and what he did. And maybe in Jackson's mind, he believed he wasn't doing anything wrong, but he was, without a doubt. You can rob a bank and think that you're not doing anything wrong, but it's still illegal and it's still wrong. It's as simple as that. So I think that wraps up this episode. I will likely be back with a little bit more. I also want to talk about some other cases that are in the past. Those will include Amanda Knox and Raffaele Celescito. I will be discussing them, although I have to review that cases. There's a lot of stuff there. A lot. And then, of course, that will easily lead me into the West Memphis 3 case, which is another case that was given just a whole bunch of propaganda that I'd eventually like to get through. But if there's anything more you'd like me to talk about with Michael Jackson, I will be glad to, because I've been following this for so long and there's just so much information. It's so weird how you think you know a lot about something and I feel confident in the stuff that I know, but all the time I learn new things. All the time, even after all these years. And some of it I just have to relearn it because I'll remember it, but I'll have to be reminded of it again. Like, oh, yeah, I remember this. So it just is one of those cases because it is someone's life and all of this stuff covers many, many years. I think the most important thing we have to remember is that there are more victims out there. And I really, really hope that one day they will be able to come forward and tell their story and not have to fear anybody giving them a bunch of crap or calling them liars. Calling Michael Jackson a pedophile, coming out, telling your story about him it's not shocking anymore. Because we know what happened. We know he was a pedophile. Everyone with a brain knows he's a pedophile. This is not shocking. I will never understand how there are still people out there who are just, oh my God, how could you say that about the man? He just slept in bed with children. I mean, he just had multiple people accuse him of molestation. He only paid out millions multiple times. How could you possibly say he was a pedophile? Somebody help me here. Somebody help me understand that mentality because I will never get it. It's so obvious and he flaunted it in our faces. That's the thing that really gets to me is that he flaunted it and he just put it out there. Everything that he did, it was always about him and what he wanted. He didn't care about anybody else. Anybody. That's what's so sickening. But he's dead now, and I think as of the 25th, so not today, but tomorrow, it'll be his death anniversary. And I will talk to you very soon.